Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about what Jesus says about money. Continuing on in our series, the Sermon on the Mount. Last week we talked about fasting, and we did a little bit different. Sarah and I can have a conversation, answering some of the most asked questions about it, and that way it's not as preachy, but it's more just a conversation talking about that. And so we are continuing on in our series, and just the few things that we did in the past. We talked about in the Sermon on the Mount. It's like the list is growing now, but we did Beatitudes, salt and light, the law, anger and hatred, adultery, divorce, retaliation, loving your enemies, doing good in secret, praying like Jesus, the Lord's Prayer, fasting, and today what Jesus says about money. And so we are diving right into it this week. But Jesus does say a lot about money when he was here on this earth. He actually talks a lot about money. And so Jesus knew that it was a really important topic because so many people are obsessed with money and they revolve their lives around it. And so Jesus' ministry was actually operated by donations and people supporting it. So it wasn't like Jesus was like money's necessarily bad, but it can be used for bad. And so there was a group of women, mostly the wives of the disciples, and there was actually a money bag that the disciples had. And so can you guess which disciple was in charge of the money bag? It was Judas Iscariot, the disciple who betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, which is the historical cost at that time of a slave. And so this is what Jesus became for our salvation. But today we're going to look at just a small portion of what Jesus says about money, and he brings a healthy perspective of this useful but often dangerous tool. Do you want to read this? Do you want me to read that?
I'll read it. So Matthew 6:19 says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also."
Yeah, that's really powerful. We're going to pause right there, and there's actually a second part that we're going to read later on. But one of the most famous lines that Jesus says about money across the board is, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And so, Sarah, what do you think Jesus means by that?
Put your money where your mouth is, basically.
Yeah, can you imagine someone, let's just say we have the purple party and the orange party, let's say they're politics, and let's say you talk about the orange party, but then you actually put your money to support the purple party. You basically, what you're doing to support something and where your money going is what you actually truly believe in. Mm-hmm. And so what's really important to you. I could say PlayStation's better, but I bought an Xbox with my money, and so my money's going to talk in that regards. And so Jesus says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And so when I think of that, what's important to us, it isn't just talk, but money isn't just money. When we think of money, it's hard-earned work. And so it's our labor, it's our hard work behind it, and we're putting our money somewhere. And so, Sarah, what do you think Jesus meant by moth and rust destroy? He says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal." What do you think he means by that, by laying up treasures on earth?
Everything here is temporary.
Yeah. You want to elaborate? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, if you actually think about it, and not sometimes you're like, oh yeah, my bank account, it'll be there forever. It's historically, not always. America won't necessarily be here forever. Rome had existed for such a long time, one of the longest empires in the world, but that didn't last forever. And so, nothing really lasts forever. The historical context of by the moth and rust, there's a few things that wealth was stored in back then. Cattle was a huge thing, but as we know, cattle die, and sickness could come and kill off the cattle. Another big thing was clothes. Clothes was really expensive, and so we have a better way to store our clothes inside a nice home. But back then, moths would actually eat a lot of the clothes, and so they would only last so long. And then gold and their precious metals and the rust would really get to them back then, especially then more than it is now. And so, but then you think of even today, whether that's cattle or gold or clothes, just think of land or paper money or stock or businesses. All those things can go away. None of them are eternal. Even if they last our lifetime, it's not going to last on for generations. And so, is wealth really safe on this earth? The reality is no, a lot of this stuff is really temporal. And so, is true wealth in heaven in any possible danger? And I'm going to say no. Jesus is talking about the wealth that we can have on this earth that's temporary, and it's here one day and it's gone the next. Or if we focus on what's actually going to last forever, and that's in heaven where we can store up our treasure. And so, Sarah, what's a way that you think that we could store up treasure in heaven as opposed to storing it up on earth? Maybe think of when we give to missions.
I was gonna say that.
You're going to say that?
Yeah.
You want to tell them?
Yeah, when we donate to missionaries or different ministries, and then someone gets saved because of that.
Yeah. Let's just say it's like $30, and I'm like, okay, I could take that $30 and put it in a bank account, and one day that's going to be gone. Or I could say I'm going to take that, whatever it is per month that we've decided, and I'm going to say, okay, we're going to give that for a missionary, and they're going to go tell someone about Jesus, and that's going to have an everlasting impact because someone found Jesus, and now they're going to be in heaven. And so, 100,000 years from now, that $30 in that bank account, every month is not going to exist at all. But what actually did make an impact is going to exist. And so this is what Jesus is getting at. Not that everything has to go there and nothing can go in the bank account, but Jesus is letting us know that our heart is where our treasure is where our heart is. And so, is Jesus trying to focus on wealth, or is there a bigger picture?
Why are you asking me all the questions?
Okay, I'll answer this one. Okay, so maybe we shouldn't be focusing on such temporary things when we can be focusing on the eternal. That's what I feel like Jesus is saying. Instead of just focusing on what's temporary, why don't we focus on the eternal if we can? And so, there is such a bigger picture than just money that Jesus is talking about. When you think about just this earth in general, okay, I've been waving my arms a lot, but when you think about like earth and history in general, like there's bigger things than money, like people and civilization and who we are. Like these things are really important, and so Jesus is letting us know that if we're just so focused on making money and spending money and like all this thing are revolving around money, then we're not going to see beyond ourselves. We're not going to see life as it's supposed to be. So next question here, do you know anybody who obsesses over money? So I'm not really asking us here because I'm not going to just say, oh yeah, so and so, okay? But I want you to think about that as you're watching this. Do you know anybody, you just think about it, do you know anybody that obsesses over money? I think we all know people. Doesn't mean that their entire lives, but maybe they go through a season. Maybe you know someone who for a while they just got their job and like all they're thinking about is making money, earning money, and I know some people that work 7 days a week. And I'm like, when do you have time for anything? It's all about just getting more just so they can get more. It's like a high score. And so if so, what's the point? What's the point of getting all that? And so I do think a lot of people treat it like a high score, but all right, Sarah, this one's for you. Is Jesus against money?
No, he's not.
Why?
Because money can help us, and it can help people, and Jesus is all about people.
Yeah, Jesus is all about people. So the point of money is to be able to easily trade your labor for other people's labor. And so whether that's a good or a service, we have learned about in social studies, goods and services, all throughout Scripture, literally all throughout the Bible, Jesus teaches us to be responsible with money. So not to worship it or to exploit people for it, but rather to use it as it's meant to be used, as a tool. And so let's read the next section. Do you want to read that?
Sure. Matthew 6:22 says, "The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money."
Yeah. So when you first start reading this, like I said, this was continuing on from the last verse. At first, I'm like, why is he talking about eyes and health and darkness and light? And so I did do a little bit of studying to get some context here. And so, like I said, this part about the eyes can be very confusing about, why is he talking about the eye is the lamp of the body? So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness.
Oh, my body must be really bad.
Yeah, because your eyesight. Yeah. So you can take it a literal sense in that. But if you look at the context, he talks about money, and he talks about eyes and darkness, and then he talks about money. And so the reality is he's actually still talking about money. So we're going to look at that. Not necessarily, in the whole time he's talking about money, he's actually talking about our heart and serving two masters, whether that's God or people. So culturally, the eye can mean intent. And so when I'm looking at something, I'm looking at that opportunity with intent, or I'm looking at this with intent, with a meaning behind it. And so if you have two eyes, and one has good intent, and the other has bad intent, like you're trying to serve God and you're trying to serve money, the bad intent is going to prevail. It's going to taint the good. And so you think about this. Here's a good question. I want you guys to think about what happens if you take, let's say I have fresh water, and then I have, this is, you have to picture in your head, I have salt water. Okay, I take fresh water and salt water, and then mix them together in a bucket. Is the water going to be fresh water, or is it going to be salt water?
Salt water.
It's going to be salt water. And so if one eye is good and one eye is bad, if we're going to try to worship God, but we're also going to try to worship this world and worship money, which is really worshiping ourselves, because money is something that you can get whatever you want for yourself, then we're going to have salt water. We're not going to have fresh water. And so there's going to be darkness instead of light. That's what he means by that with the eyes. But then he goes on and says that we cannot serve both God and money. That's huge. We really can't serve both God and money. And so one of the questions I want to ask you guys today is, are you serving money? Or is money serving you? That's what we need to do, is make money serve us. We're not supposed to serve money. It's just supposed to be a tool. And so God is supposed to be served. And God is not supposed to be used as a tool. Some people have it backwards. Some people, they serve money and then they use God as a tool. But we're supposed to serve God and use money as a tool. And always, every single week I bring this up, that Jesus is concerned about the heart. He's concerned about the intent. And so we're supposed to be hard workers, and we're supposed to earn our wage. We're also supposed to manage it wisely. That includes spending, giving, saving, and investing. So just because it's a good thing to give doesn't mean you're supposed to always give everything. If Jesus tells you to give everything, which he does to some people in the Bible, then that's what you're supposed to do. But we see that the way that he talks to everybody, he doesn't say that to every single person. Okay, it is a little bit different. So don't go and sell everything you have right now, unless Jesus is clearly speaking to you and you've talked to people about it and you prayed about it. Here's a good example. Actually, in our lives right now, and what Jesus is calling us to do is to go and leave this country and go to another country and tell people about Jesus. So what does that mean? That means we're selling everything that we own and we're going to go to another country and follow Jesus. So we are obeying that, but it's not just one day I'm I can't own this cup because it's sinful. That's not what Jesus is getting at all. In reality, if it's anything is obstructing us from worshiping Jesus or following him, then that needs to go. Some people live their whole lives throwing away relationships and family just so they could have a higher number and add to their higher score in life. So Jesus brings perspective. Nothing lasts here on this earth except people. And people are the only thing that are eternal. And so we're going to bring this for a close here. So why focus your efforts on temporary money when you can just invest your efforts on relationships, people, and family? This is the heart of Jesus. You want to add anything with that? You're so sweet. So we're going to end with this question here. Are you more concerned about money, or are you more concerned about God's heart? People. I want you to reflect on this question and pray that God would help you have the right intent of the eyes to serve one master, God. That he would give you a better perspective on life. And as always, if you need to talk or pray or ask questions or even get biblical advice, biblical financial advice, if you get a job and you're like, hey, I've been noticing I've been obsessed with money, or I want to properly save it and properly invest it and properly spend it and properly give it. We're here to talk about that. We're always here to pray. And so, we love you guys, and we're going to see you guys next week.